Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining the Bill and Ted press conference. I'm Stevie Wong, and I just wanted to quickly introduce Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, who's going to answer all your questions that you sent in. Welcome, everybody. Let's just get right into it. Basically, I'm going to start with you, Keanu. The term "be excellent to each other" is a line from the film that's really needs to be a motto for 2020. Why do you think this advice to be kind to each other is so relevant right now?
Well, I think it's relevant all the time, um, and and I guess now it's has a certain more impact just because of the situation that we find ourselves in, and the idea of be excellent to each other, I think, is a very good idea.
And Alex?
I think Keanu summed it up pretty well. I think that the Bill and Ted movies have kind of an inherent sweetness and sort of a theme of inclusivity of people, being kind to each other and coming together. And that was certainly the story that Chris Matheson and Solomon set out to write with this third one many years before there was a COVID or a situation we're in today. So it just so happens to be something that may bring folks some joy this particular time because of that. But that was the movie that we all set out to make.
Alex, after all these years of not playing Billard, like how easy was it to get back into the character's speech and mannerisms?
We had time. The film took time to get made. It went through a lot of iterations with the script that we all worked on together, and the writers put a lot of effort into. During that time, it gave me a chance to wrap my head around, who this guy was at this age. And Keanu and I spent a lot of time talking about those things. So it wasn't like I just had to suddenly turn it on like a switch. I had time to prepare, and then there's also a familiarity to working with Keanu and the physicality of that, the instinctive nature of the way we riff on the dialogue. And that stuff just kind of did kick in on its own. It did for me anyway. But it was helped by the fact that we had a lot of time to rehearse and prep and discuss it.
Keanu, then, when you did have conversations with Alex about what it would mean for these characters to be in this age that they're playing, that you guys are playing, what were the conversations about, and how are Bill and Ted like advanced in this time?
Yeah, I mean, there's been many years since we've seen them last, and during those years, they've lived life, and they've got more mature daughters and the relationship with their wives, and they've been with their friendship and being together with this kind of pressure of this destiny that they were given, and responsibility of uniting the world through music, that they haven't been able to do. And just how do those pressures, how does that maturity, what does that look like? And then so to play these guys who are still familiar, but not caricatures of themselves from the past, and be present, so that we feel the weight of these guys, as well as their joy and their lightness and their spirit.
After all these years of playing such positive characters, like what is the after effect of doing Bill and Ted like for a period of time? Like, do you walk away in a good in a good mood, or like what is your kind of like version of PTSD of like, oh, what Bill and Ted looks like for you guys? What is it like?
Post Bill and Ted order.
Yeah.
I would say for me, the whole experience has a kind of warmth to it. That's always been the case with playing these guys because they are joyful, optimistic people, even if they're experiencing hardships and challenges and have fear and doubt and all the human traits that we do have as these characters. I think added to that, this experience was particularly warm because there were so many of us reuniting. Keanu and I already see a fair amount of each other, but we hadn't seen or worked with William Sadler and Hal Landon Jr. and Amy Stock, and Scott Krupp was producing, and there's this great gang together. and just the incredible commitment of this ensemble cast that we were so lucky to have, and what they brought to the table, and the crew that we had that was really stellar. So it was a very warm experience. It wasn't easy. It was challenging. There were difficult days. But I think you come away from the experience with, I felt very good about what we made, and I felt, great appreciation for having had the experience.
Keanu, to then, because Bill and Ted is so iconic to the 80s, were there a little bit reservations or kind of questions that you guys had to then bring that kind of iconic duo to a modern day? Like, was there any kind of, conversations that you guys had to like kind of modernize it, or just make sure that it didn't feel like basically like a relic, if you will?
The writers did that. I think the way that they structured the film, the plot of the film, it was all about facing the music and being in the moment. So, that work was kind of done for us. I mean, I think you see that in one of the opening sequences of Bill and Ted at the wedding ceremony. They're not playing, Van Halen riffs. They've expanded their musical excellence, but they've moved on. They've developed from that. The themes of the daughters, using music as a mashup kind of construction, very modern kind of idea. I think brought it to present day. So I would just say some of those elements.
How has fatherhood changed Bill and Ted?
Well, I mean, they have real, that's another aspect of the modernity of it, of what takes it kind of away from the last time we saw them was, they have very distinct lives with their wives, with their partners and their parents, and they love their kids and they love their wives, and yet they're having challenges in their life. And in typical Bill and Ted fashion, they're very kind of, simple guys who are always facing these gigantic challenges, right? And in this case, we have not succeeded in writing the song that will save the world, and ultimately turns out reality as we know it. But that could be ascribed to any challenge that one faces at a certain point in their life, only not writ quite so large. So that's really what's impacting us, is how do we relate to our wives and our daughters? We're having some trouble with our wives. We're in marriage counseling the first time you see us. Daughters are they love us very much, but they know that we're having a hard time. So that's creating some friction within the family. And, Keanu and I just leaned into the grounded stuff. So did Dean Pariseau. It was very important to him to kind of find a grounded foundation from which to launch into this completely insane narrative.
I got to ask, what was it like to kind of bring in Samara and Bridget into the fold, and to kind of work with an energy, because obviously there are people that you've worked with prior, but then to also bring in new people into the mix. What was that like for both of you to have daughters all of a sudden even?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, Bridget and Samara are just lovely people, and very, very talented, and brought a kind of enthusiasm and craft. So it was very fun.
And for you, Alex?
I feel the same. It was there was a little bit of anxiety, not about them as actors at all, but about even in the earliest iterations of how those characters would be conveyed. And we were really happy with the way Chris and Ed had written the daughters. But it was really a whole different ballgame when Bridget and Samara were cast, and the amount of thought they put into playing them. And it wasn't at all just watching our movies 5 times and then doing us, thankfully. They just created their own characters that were very much unique to them and their worldviews and all of that. So it was very gratifying. It was also fun to play Bill and Ted as dads, it changes you in terms of how you approach the role. So, You know, we never felt these movies were kind of bro-y. Even the originals, I don't think really are in a sense. They're more childlike than they are that. But once you're a parent, it's really not that, you know. And Bill and Ted love being parents. You know, they love being husbands. So that created more things to play.
Are there things that that you guys did in this film that, if you looked back at the previous ones, that you were not able to accomplish? Maybe technology, maybe like the way the stories are told, or just the ability to tell all the different, you know, were there things that happened today that you could not do back in the day?
No.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. I mean, I think.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that the writers were intent on finding new ways into Bill and Ted. So, and I think they gave us a lot of meat on the bone to work with, because we get to play ourselves as so many different versions of ourselves. So we're really looking at many different facets of these characters, and that's new. That's something that we didn't do before. That's something that wasn't in either of the other two movies were evil robot us's, which were very specific. But this is really just Bill and Ted, who are in very painful, very, very traumatic periods of different iterations of their lives. And there's a lot of comic potential there, as well as emotional potential. There was a lot of new things that the guys came up with that gave everyone room to play. But I can't think of anything that we could only do now for some reason.
Ken, I got to ask, there are so many versions of Bill and Ted that you know, that you guys interact with. Which were the most fun to play, or the ones that you kind of look forward to doing the most?
You know, I can't choose that. I don't think there's a most here. You know, we had some extraordinary makeups. So the prison yard, Bill and Ted. But I think it was more just emotionally, just the characters kind of got kind of dark. And so it's nice to play this kind of darkness against the lightness of it. They're almost like exuberantly darker.
It was interesting because when the trailer came out, people really responded to the prison yard versions of you guys. What was that like to kind of like expose it? Like, did your family members like see that prior, or did you kind of like want to surprise them all with that image?
My family happened to come to New Orleans and visit the set the day we shot that sequence. So there we were, sweating profusely in the 104,000 degree heat and the 9,050% humidity. And I looked out bleary-eyed and saw my kids looking quite amused, shall we say. But in general, no. We really wanted to maintain surprises for the audience. We have managed to continue to do that. There's a lot that no one has seen yet that's in this film. There are whole characters. In fact, there are several major characters in the film that have not been exposed, and many of the iterations of us have not really been exposed, or several, I should say. There aren't that many. So, you know, we've tried to keep it fresh for people, but the prisoners, it was fun to see that get unleashed on the world.
It went crazy. You know, we people ask you about George Carlin, and I'm just wondering, do you have any lovely memories about working with him, and kind of what did his presence kind of bring to the films, and still brings to the Bill and Ted franchise?
It brought class. I mean,
Sure,
you know, he was just such a really just not humble, but just down to earth, and worked really hard on the Rufus, and you know, he brought a weight to it. You know, of course it's George Carlin coming from the future, you know, and yeah, it was really extraordinary to have a chance to work with such an incredible person and artist.
Alex, do you have any like fond memories of kind of even interacting, not maybe off camera and stuff?
I mean, I have like an overall fuzzy, and I mean warm and fuzzy, not indistinct fuzzy, memory and gratitude about having been able to work with George so closely. Keanu and I, we were young. We had both, been around famous people, even when we did the first movie. But, George was a different kind of famous than the type of people you were used to meeting as an actor. This was, sort of like the beginning of the rock star comedy identity, right? Pryor, Carlin, I mean, obviously Lenny Bruce. There'd never really been people like that before. And so they were kind of godlike in a way, right? They were so much more than just a personality. And I remember being very starstruck by him and really grateful. He was very, as Keanu said, he was very open. He was very accommodating. He didn't feel a wall with George at all. But I just have a kind of an overall feeling of gratitude that we got that experience. And a huge gratitude that he's in the movie. He really elevated Bill and Ted 1 just by his presence.
The length, basically the period of time since the first film and now, there's actually a whole generation of people who've never seen the previous films and actually will discover this Bill and Ted for the first time, and then we'll have to go backwards and stuff. What is that like to work on a project where will hit so many different generations at this point?
Yeah, I don't think that hasn't hit yet. That's more of a concept than a reality. But yeah. I mean, we've experienced something akin to that in the sense of meeting people who've, said, who've met us and then said, "Wow, it's you guys," and we're like, "Hi," and then then they're telling us how they've shown the film to their kids, and then we've met those kids, so. So we've had something akin to it, but I haven't had that experience of, I've never seen them, but then I saw the third one, and then hopefully they'll enjoy it.
Yeah, we tried to make a film that would be enjoyable whether you'd seen the first two or not. So we'll soon find out if that's true.
To kind of live with these characters for such a period of time and kind of travel with their journey, how has your kind of journey been to be alongside Bill and Ted? Like, what have they kind of given you, over the years?
Well, so many warm moments with fans, and then, for me, it's such an honor to work with Alex, and the way that we can share our sense of humor and laugh in the work is something I don't get anywhere else. It's pretty extraordinary, and I'm very grateful for it. Thanks, Alex.
Hey man, it's obviously mutual. It's a strange and very lovely thing to have in your life. It's very sweet from the sort of outside aspect of having, you're in your day, you're in your head, you're in your world, which has got nothing to do with public life. And some 5-year-old comes running up to you to tell you how much you mean to them is pretty amazing. And then there's the internal performance part of it, of just having had these experiences. Obviously, Keanu and I have been friends all these years, but it's very different. Sort of my memories of the performance aspect with him and getting into this groove that we get into when we're actually, it's like it is a lot like being in a band, especially the way comedy works. It's so much about timing that we literally play together. And so to have had the opportunity to come back and do that again, I didn't think about it that way going in because there was so much work to do. But on the first week, I found myself just playing again with Keanu, and it was really fun and instinctive and just a very rare thing. It's its own thing.
I was actually going to ask, what did the first day of set look like for you guys, or feel like, with the costumes and your rolling camera, and then immediately like the body language kicks in? Like, did you even have a moment where you stood back and you're like, dude, this is pretty cool? Like, I don't know, when did that hit for you guys while shooting?
Yeah, our first day was getting into the phone booth, or actually in the phone booth. But yeah, we started to get into the phone booth. And I think that's where it landed for us. Like, okay, here we go. But I thought it was cool that we got to do it in the phone booth. Somehow that was kind of like a touchstone, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was inadvertent. We had no say in that, right? Or much of anything else, which was a good thing. But looking back, that was a smart move on whoever's part that was. I don't think it was intentional, but it was helpful actually to start that way. I think for me, it was a few days into production. I think after we shot the marriage counseling scene, and there was just a moment where I just felt like he and I were in a real groove, and there's really, you know, it's not, there's nothing, don't mean it's not precious, because it's like there's many different things one can do in life where you experience this, right? Not just acting in a movie, but it just suddenly something was there that I didn't expect, that I hadn't quite remembered. It was just back, and that was nice.
If by an unfortunate chance that it takes another 30 years to make another Bill and Ted, how would you see?
That's not good. Yeah.
We had a preview. It looked like fun to me. I mean, I don't know.
I don't think that. I mean, 30 years from now, yeah, it might be tough, but I guess anything's possible.
So actually, I was going to ask, because of technology advancing over these years, is it a little bit different to kind of make Bill and Ted now? Was it easier, or is it because there seems to be a lot more for the fans? There's a lot of cool stuff to watch. So I'm just curious, like, how has technology kind of helped Bill and Ted in this case?
The nature, I mean, it didn't have a lot of impact on it, but I mean, we shot the first two films on film. So, you know, this was we shot with digital cameras. And so the filmmaking, but Dean Pariseau, our director, grew up with film. So the digital process looked very much like the film process. So that was cool. But I don't think technologically, maybe the advancement in terms of speed of rendering visual effects is a little different. But.
Yeah, I honestly would say that from a practical standpoint, this film was harder in many ways than the first two, and more challenging because despite, and I think this happens with technology, not to overhype here, but Keanu made a whole movie about this, which I highly recommend. But oftentimes in the digital world, you end up, because of the ease you get from the technology, you end up just going for more of everything, right? So if you're editing, you have less downtime because you're on a nonlinear system that just goes all the time, and you can get burned out very easily. In the old days, you had to change reels, and you were using real film, and things went at actually a slightly more measured pace. Thankfully, we had Dean at the helm, and to Keanu's point, I remember that I forgot we were even shooting digital till like week 2, which I know is crazy because I direct and I look at cameras all the time. But I remember, I don't think I said this to anyone because I think it would have felt foolish. But I remember going to set one morning and going, oh, we're not even shooting film. We're actually shooting digitally, which I hadn't even thought about it. To his credit, he was really pacing us like a movie. And Shelley Johnson was pacing it, and they weren't just gunning. We weren't just hosing scenes down just because we could. And I'm really grateful that they all designed it that way.
This is going to be the last question. What advice do you think Bill and Ted, the beacons of hope, slayers of evil, bringers of rock, would give to everybody that need positive kind of words in 2020?
Well, this
Alex, do the line, man, and I'll do the other line. Just do it.
Excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, all the people that send in questions and stuff. And congrats on the film.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right.
That's a wrap.
All right. Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap.